Very good morning and welcome to the hotspot. We are here to talk Manchester United. That a day just after we had that humiliating loss against Manchester City at Old Trafford, we try to move on, but not without talking about some of these players. Now, these two, Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, have clearly proved to be untouchables in the eyes of Erik ten Hag. Even when they are not performing, they have always been starting games and playing nearly 90 minutes of all games. Question is, are they untouchable? Is Bruno untouchable because he's the captain of Manchester United? Is Marcus Rashford, being the highest paid player at the club, our top scorer from last season, untouchable because of that? Well, that is what exactly we need to examine because clearly, if we are watching the same football with the boss Erik ten Hag, Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford needed to be benched for games as way back as probably Brighton or Sheffield or Brentford as way back as then because they have consistently not been performing. But for some reason, the manager comes out in the press and he is praising them and defending them and assuring us that the way he's motivating them to regain their form is by playing them and playing them. You keep playing them at the expense of other players who perhaps could be performing. And again, this is another classic example of perhaps us being fearful of being critical of Erik ten Hag because we'll still come out here and say he's the boss and behind ten Hag we stand. But really, does it take a genius to see that Marcus Rashford is way off his best and cannot afford to be starting games ahead of certain games that seem to be performing, rather certain players who seem to be performing? So for me, that's a huge problem that I think as we do start this week, we need to examine, we need to interrogate how on earth are we going to deal with these two players, big players by our standards as Manchester United, but they are not performing. I've listened to people, and this includes legends of Manchester United. I've listened yesterday to Roy Keane saying Bruno Fernandes does not deserve to be the captain of Manchester United. I said it when he was being named captain that for me, I wouldn't have named him captain because I know, first of all, his antics on the pitch are so not for captain. They are the most non-captain antics you will see from a captain because as a captain, you can't be the first one to throw around hands when a bad call is made. When a referee misses a call, you should be the one being showing other players what to do, being exemplary. Exemplary. But Bruno is always arguing, is always moving around and throwing antics around. It's so not, it's so immature. And Roy Keane said it. And again, also, have never been sure about what impact the armband will have on him. I feel like he became worse when he became the captain. Perhaps the load is too much. Perhaps he plays while thinking about it. Never mind his talent. He's one of our most talented players, but he cannot perform. He's not delivering results. Perhaps because the captain's armband is way too heavy for him. And I said it here several times before. And some of you are saying the captain's armband is not heavy. Is not heavy for Bruno. But clearly, what can you say? Can you all this poor performance we are seeing from him game in game out? I think it's for me sheer you know a lack of the ability to deal with the role of a skipper of a club like Manchester United. And again, that's why you see most managers don't want to make their best players captain because the responsibility then gets to their heads and they can't play football. For Rashford, it's a confusion because his lack of effort, his lack of, of effectiveness is making us look like we actually don't have a good striker. How on earth do you explain Rasmus Hoyland with the good moves he makes in the box, with what we know the power he has, with the ability he's got? How do we explain him failing to score in 8 games? How do we explain Rasmus Hoyland failing to score in the Premier League now, with what we see him do day in and day out in every game? Because we are watching him, and I don't remember a single game when we all came out and said Rasmus Hoyland has done nothing. The boy clearly makes the right moves, tries to do what he's supposed to do, what is expected of him. But Marcus Rashford, who is supposed to be feeding him balls, is also thinking about going for goal. And again, I bring in Ten Hag here because I remember in his press conferences, Ten Hag continuously makes us feel or makes it look like Marcus Rashford's role is to score goals rather than assist Rasmus Hoyland. And again, that speaks to a lack of clarity in roles. Players, that's why are perhaps running to each other. They are running left, right, and center. There is no clarity on what the the role of each player is, and that's a wrong thing. That's a wrong way to manage. Each player should know their responsibility. Otherwise, you will have Harry Maguire going for goal because he feels he can score a goal or two. Every player will want to score a goal, and that's the worst form of management you will have. Each player has got to know the role they're supposed to play. Now, Marcus Rashford's role has got to be to feed. The role of the wingers have got to be to feed Rasmus Højlund, the number 9. But the manager makes it look like their role is to score goals. So, do we blame them? Well, they are not scoring the goals anyway, but is that what we want? I think with Rasmus Højlund, since he arrived and what we've seen him do in the box, do we really want Marcus Rashford to be scoring goals? I think we want him to be assisting Højlund more, looking out for him, picking him, connecting with him. And when he has done that a few times, there have been goals, precisely in the Champions League, I think. So I think we've got to question Marcus Rashford and Bruno. They should be starting on the bench. This is the statement that Erik ten Hag has got to make. We praise Erik ten Hag for being ruthless. Perhaps he's not as ruthless as we feel. Maybe his ruthlessness is off the pitch, but when it comes to the pitch, they are untouchables. And I've seen him start to bench Anthony because he's not delivering. Why isn't he doing the same to Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford? What's stopping him? Players like the young Majbury, players who have put in the ring to be starting games should be starting. Players who have not been given enough opportunities to play should be given the opportunity, because even those who are on big wages and are starting, who have got huge responsibilities, are not performing. So, doomed when they start, doomed when they don't. So, for me, clearly, Marcus Rashford, he's paid almost £400,000 per week just to score one goal in 2 months. It's insane. You've got to react as a manager. You've got to send a statement to this boy that, whereas you earn all that money, you earned it last season, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed a start even when you're doing absolutely nothing. Even when you're doing absolutely nothing, you cannot be out there running around the pitch, without any direction, fearing the ball. Man United players shy away from the ball. They fear to ask for the ball. So you clearly see a club that is in shambles, and players who know that they are untouchable and they have got no desire to play. For some, to some extent, I actually feel like some of these players do not want to play for the manager. And again, that's one of the biggest problems you will have at a football club. If your players are not willing to play for you, to die a little for you, and management today has changed that. Unlike before, when the Wayne Rooney's, the David Beckham's, the Roy Keanes would play for Sir Alex Ferguson, yet perhaps they feared out of a lot of fear, not entirely out of love, but yes, they respected him, but it was more of fear that he instilled and control. And these players just had to play for him because they would fear what would happen if they did. Right now, it's not like that. Players today are supposed to be managed by the manager. You're supposed to deal with them in ways that will motivate them to work for you in a from a more of a parental point of view. They should look at you like a parent. You see how Jurgen Klopp manages. You see how a bit of Pep Guardiola does it. Even Jose Mourinho, all players who have played under Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti will speak highly about them because of how they deal with them, how they treat them. Now, Erik ten Hag was almost the same at Ajax, but the one at United is becoming ruthless, more so off the pitch, and you probably see players playing out of fear, not out of love and respect and wanting to die for their manager. And for me, that's a huge problem. And these two are guilty as charged. Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes should be benched for the next games. At least one of them. Start with one of them. Bench them and give chance to the other young players to come up and play. Let me know what you think as we do again try to recover from this humiliating loss at home against our rivals Manchester City. Hotspot, subscribe. My name is Webb. I'll catch you later.